Gary, was this the best outcome, the best world of all possible worlds, and will that sentiment continue?
It was one of the best. I suppose an outcome that didn't have Marine Le Pen in the second round would have been even more cheered by the markets. But her vote share was lower than expected. Many thought she might get as much as 25%, so she fell well short of that kind of a margin. Macron does seem to be pulling in a lot of endorsements from some of the candidates that didn't make it through to the second round. So it's looking as though it's a pretty sure thing in terms of Macron being the next president of France. Much will have to follow from there, but it certainly tends to mitigate the tail risk that's out there.
Now, we know the spread, as we've been calling it, is back down under 50 basis points, which means, you know, relatively little of a difference between German yields and French yields. But what do we know about how Macron would steer the French economy within Europe? So would he cure its banks? Would he be willing to contribute to, you know, like helping the rest of the banks around the euro area, you know, get better and so forth?
Well, from his campaign, we know precious little. We know he tried to be a centrist to appeal to different parts of French society. He also talked about essentially, though, throwing out some of the old, let's say, baggage of French politics. So he tries to represent change, and yet he tries to represent moderation. And how that translates into economic policy remains to be seen. But I think that what we can see from someone like Macron appealing to the voters is a desire to try to renew France, a desire to introduce, therefore, reforms that will spur growth, but at the same time to focus on issues like income distribution, as well as trying to mitigate some of the effects of competition, including globalization. So it'll be a mixed bag. It's not yet clear exactly what the concrete proposals will look like.
So are we looking at a potentially divided world now in terms of free trade and protectionism? Are we looking at, you know, a Britain that's more protectionist, an America that's more protectionist, and then just little areas, if you like, for example, you know, a portion of Europe, not even all of Europe, and maybe places like Canada that are more open to trade?
Well, it's interesting that rhetorically the baton does seem to have passed from the United States and maybe even from Great Britain in terms of defenders of free trade and open markets to Europe as well as to even China. China picked that up at Davos. In terms of Europe, it's probably too early to see whether Europe will really be the guiding light for freer trade and for immigration policies.
We still have to go through Italy and German elections, right?
Precisely, and so it's hard even for those that are staunch believers in liberal views towards trade for those to be advocated forcefully at this time. But my sense is that yes, is that Europe is going to be probably the area that promotes more openness and more trade than, say, the United States will at present, or even some other countries.
So what's the view at GAM then on Europe first in terms of, I mean, I'm sure that there has to be a view among the investment managers about whether it's a good time to buy into some of the more battered European companies or not, and then your view on the economy, maybe that differs.
Yeah, I think that Europe is the opportunity. Many have been citing this opportunity for a long time, but have been wary to get in part maybe because of the French elections, have been some other political obstacles. But Europe is likely to demonstrate better earnings potential over the course of the next 1 to 2 years than the United States, across most sectors, by the way. The economy has improved. That should translate into improved operating leverage, i.e. performance to the bottom line of European companies. Cyclicals will probably lead the way there. But in terms of other markets, I think there's also potential. I think the euro is moving back up and will probably retrace back towards the 115 level, and euro dollar is an example of that. I do think, however, that one of the things that we have to be aware of is that with political risk now subsiding in Europe and the improved growth performance becoming manifest, the ECB will have to walk back from where Mario Draghi recently took them and to consider its move to neutrality. Very
quickly then, when does the Fed start unwinding the balance sheet and perhaps giving us another tweak of the tightening spanner?
I think we'll know more in September, October around the Fed's balance sheet's intentions, but it could happen at the end of the year. The ECB probably around the same time in terms of a move towards neutral.